You got it. That's square. That's great.
I was just going to mention about the Montco art photography show. So if you have any questions, Jenny wrote it all up in the newsletter. It has my email address. You can text me, but right now we only have 9 pieces, which will be beautiful, but we have room for 100. So we need more. And we have an extremely diverse group of photographers here. So they're up for a wide variety of photography. We have great talented photographers. So 3 pieces or less per person. And if you have any questions, yes.
This stuff is for sale, correct?
It doesn't have to be for sale, but yes, it can be for sale. The Montco they have someone working in the gallery space in the bookstore area. So they take care of the sales.
Having never sold something in something like this, do you have any advice for people on pricing?
Mia, you might know better than me, but I know Mia and I are both in PAG, Pottstown Area Artists Guild, and we do a show every year, and they do sell 5 or 6 pieces every show. So
Right,
I think
the pricing of, yes.
I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Say you spend hours on it. But it's your concept, it's your experience somewhat, framing.
Yep.
Depending on if that's someone printed.
I know several pieces sold for 700 and up at the last Pottstown show. But they, the little note that I put when I talked to Patrick, who is the coordinator, Montco is supposed to take a percentage. So in that letter, it says there may be a percentage of our sales taken out, but when PAG did it last year, Patrick did not do it. It's a whole messy thing about a nonprofit having a.
That's good information.
Yes, so it is all in that PDF, but if anybody has a question, I'm happy to answer it. I will tell you, July 11th, I'm going to Iceland for 10 days, so I will not be responding very quickly. But, yep, it's all August 4th. I really do want to hear from you by August 4th. So, okay.
Thank you. Said. Okay. Okay. So I'm Mike Rumler, if everybody doesn't know that by now. As Ken already mentioned in the newsletter, we have our future competitions laid out for 2026 already. The next competition after this one is October 27th. The theme for that is Celestial Bodies. If you have any questions about that, please hit me up. And now for our tonight's main event, our theme was Capturing Motion, and please welcome our judge, Frank Smith, who was here a couple of weeks ago and gave us an awesome presentation. So it's great to see Frank again, I guess. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
This year, we need to bring this.
Well, while you guys are setting up, if I could just say an apology in advance. I mentioned early on tonight that I'm coming to you live from Cape May, New Jersey, where we have our family vacation, and there's a lot of noise in the background, and apologies in advance if that gets a little loud. And if so, I'll jump out of the room for a moment and ask for a little bit of help on that area.
Okay. Okay. Okay, first, yeah, can everybody at home see?
I can
Um,
see it.
Confirm?
I
Brian,
see
can you get it? Okay. So first category is Class A Nature. This is Burden of Creation by Jackie Burke. This won first place in this category. Frank, do you have any you want to go?
So I just want to make sure I understand the protocol. So are you going through them first, or are you going to go through them right from the beginning and ask me for my comments, or what is your preference and pleasure on that?
I'll introduce them, and then if you give comments on each one, I think that would be great.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well, I'll jump in on this. This is just absolutely a lovely photo. And obviously, I tried to keep in consideration the task at hand, which is motion here, and this is in the nature category, so I recognize that. And one of the things that I will say in advance, before we even go to the other images, I did have some feedback, but Mike made some corrections for me from the standpoint that understand that you guys are working within the PSA rules and regs, and so there might be a few comments that I will mention that may not be totally applicable with respect to some potential post-processing. But anyway, staying with this absolutely lovely image, clearly motion is in the case here. In some cases where, you've heard me speak, I think at the last time we were together, I mentioned how background is extremely important to me. This one, in this case, it just works out so nice that there isn't anything that's distracting in the background, and which just helps make this absolutely lovely. One of the things that Mike mentioned that I should potentially consider if there's anything I might do a little differently. And one of the comments back on this one was maybe just consider, and again, it doesn't have to be, is potentially just a square crop on this, since we do have a lot of excess on the right. But the good news is the the image is facing towards the right, which is where the excess is, and that gives our eyes and our brain a little bit of breathing room there too. So that aside, it's not often the very first image that I show gets to be the first place winner, but kudos to, I think you guys said it was Jackie was the person's name. So lovely image. And again, Mike, just so I'm clear on protocol, if the photographer or anybody else has questions, do you prefer that be done at the end or as I'm speaking about the image?
I think we'll hold questions to the end.
Okay, great.
Next up, we have Spring Flow by Ginny Lodge.
So a lovely image here. And by the way, all of these images are really good. You guys have some extremely good talent there. And that makes my job harder, but that's a good problem to contend with. On this one here, I like the composition. I like, of course, the subject matter. This is right up my alley as far as the things that I like to do. A consideration for the photographer in the future is this would probably work very well if you had a polarizer and maybe one was on, but maybe just not dialed in correctly. And part of the reason for me saying that is in the foreground there, we have some pretty bright highlights there, and missing potentially a little bit of detail. Excuse me, a polarizer would have gone a long way to help with that. And in the white balance, there's just a slight, tint towards the green. Well, and that's of course because we are in a forested green area, which influences some of the primary subject. Which, again, in my mind, the primary subject being the area where the rocks and the water's coming over. But the photographer did an excellent job as far as composing this. And I think just with a few little minor tweaks, particularly in the foreground. But again, I know Mike mentioned that that there's some limitations associated with it. So whether that criteria is applicable or not as it relates to the competition, I would have to defer to you guys on that part of it.
This is Lunchtime by that Tom Story.
Beautiful image again.
Sorry, just won third place. Sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. No worries. Beautiful image, and again, keeping with the theme, motion, it's, you know, obviously very much an important part of this image. If, you know, if the whale came up and, you know, was just stationary or just sitting on the top, it wouldn't have near the significance or the meaning, particularly knowing, again, the category. And add to it that the waterfowl is also moving about during the shot. The photographer was obviously very well prepared for the image here, and I think the cropping is really nice. We have the on the left side, if that little bit of water wasn't churned up there, I might be tempted to cut it back a little bit, but that also now becomes an integral part of the motion and the activity with respect to this. But having the waterfowl above, you know, the whale as it's coming up is just absolutely really nice. So really very much enjoy this. Colors look really good. Exposure looks really good. And of course, one of the most things in paramount to this is the composition, and done very well. So kudos on this.
Next we have Winged Choreography by Jackie Burke.
So another really well done image, Jackie. This you know, is a beautiful image, clearly depicting motion. The one challenge I have with the image is I don't really see a primary subject, and if there is, it's not accentuated enough. I do see in the lower, slightly to the right portion where there's one bird that appears to be a little bit more prominent. But again, I really had to kind of search to find that. But again, to me, I think the success to this image is the fact that there is all of this activity, all of the birds moving in a very similar manner, and you know, a very nice balance with that. But again, I would like to see just a little more emphasis towards a primary subject if there is one. And if there isn't, maybe there's an opportunity when photographing something like this to try to catch something like that. But again, from a composition standpoint, I'd be hard pressed to make a significant suggestion to it. I think it's just done very well.
Ready, Set, Go by Mia Curran.
So I pixel peeped on this one pretty closely, and there's you know, a couple challenges with respect to, I think, some of the noise and the focus. The composition is a great catch. The main subject, I mean, it's obvious as to what that is, and maybe just a slightly tighter crop could have been helpful, and maybe you know, a little bit more zoomed in, but not so much just straight on. I would be tempted to want to have the crop, you know, maybe pulled from the left side in, just to again give that little breathing room in which the primary subject is facing. But again, I'm being sensitive to the fact of what Mike told me about the rules with respect to PSA. So whether that's applicable or not, I don't know. But you know, the big thing for me here, and where I saw that there would be some opportunity for some correction, would be in the noise category, and at a close observation, I'm guessing one of the water droplets is what the camera picked up as a focus point, and there's a couple water droplets that are really tack sharp. But again, I really want to see more of that, of course, on the bee, or you know, I'm assuming that's a bee that's in the picture.
Okay, we have Rushing Past Stillness from Vince Pellegrini.
So absolutely lovely image, and the key here is, well, there's several things. The light, which is such an integral part about our, you know, craft as photographers, is really well balanced. I like the fact that the tree, which is illuminated, stands out. I like the fact that it's not directly centered. I enjoy the fact that we see the beautiful rushing water in the foreground. I like the fact that the photographer took the time to get a slower exposure on it. You know, one of the things I might throw out there, if there was some opportunities, maybe a little more contrast, but again, being sensitive to the rules and regs, where that tree, which is in my mind the primary subject here, and then the water is a secondary subject, could really be a standout feature on this. But very lovely image, and I like the composition and just the overall feel and effect of this. So good job.
We have Double Trouble by Bob Gross.
All right, Double Trouble. So one of the challenges in an image like this is that the two almost blend to be one, and that isn't bad in and of itself. If there was an opportunity where I'm looking at the heads of the geese, and they're competing with the each subject, and that really is a difficult situation. And we as photographers don't often get the opportunity to control that. But if it was an opportunity to shoot maybe a few more as these geese were either landing or taking off, I don't know which one it is, to get a little bit of separation from the, you know, the first goose in the picture, so it's not competing as much in the secondary image or the secondary subject on this. So overall, you know, again, it's well composed, with, you know, the challenge being for me is the separation. I really would like to see that, but the lighting is good, the balance is good. You know, if there was a minor suggestion with respect to, you know, the cropping, I'd be tempted to maybe bring the crop up a little bit from the bottom. The water at the very bottom of the image is not helping it a whole lot in that regard. So again, just a thought and a suggestion for this going forward.
Hanging on to a moving plant, Deborah Lewins.
So I had a little bit of a challenge with respect to the you know, the category that we're in here with respect to motion, because, you know, I realized that the plant was probably moving, but I think the instructions were that the image had to portray movement, and I'm not sensing a whole lot of that. Now, having said that, I really do enjoy the composition. I really enjoy the background. I really enjoy the lighting. But again, my struggle with it is knowing the you know, the category that it is in, with, again, that being the motion aspect of it. It didn't quite fit the bill for me. And the other piece to it, from a cropping standpoint, I'd want to bring that left side in just a little bit more, so that the two primary subjects, or all three, which if you take the leaf and the two dragonflies together, they're so very dead center. But beautiful background. I like the bokeh in the picture, and you know, again, those would be a couple thoughts and suggestions going forward.
The Race, Lee Reeves.
Okay, so similar with the other shot where we had the geese in the picture. Again, I always try to have separation, and that fact that we have just a little bit of the neck on the left side coming through made it a little bit challenging for me. Beautiful from the standpoint of the way the light is hitting the waterfowl. Beautiful light with respect to how the eyes are just, you know, really prominent in the shot. And again, the main feature here is recognizing that the task at hand was to imply motion here. And we have that water that's churning up from what appears to be, you know, the takeoff from this. It's just really well done. But I really would like to see, you know, again, as photographers, we can always wish for what we want, but until we can get it, that's always a tough part. But the head of the waterfowl on the left side, I'd like to just see that, you know, separated more, or you know, you can't really crop it out. You know, again, maybe you could. I'd have to experiment with that a little bit, but those would be the suggestions I would have for this going forward.
Evening Flight, Tom Story. This got second place.
So I look at this image and immediately get a nice sense of calmness, even though there's motion occurring in the image. The colors on this are just fantastic. We talked about separation before, and that is less of an issue here because the head of the two, waterfowl that are in here are not competing with each other. So again, from that standpoint, I really like it. There appear to be two structures on the upper left and the upper right, which actually help to create a frame. I love the fact that we can see the reflection in the water on those, again, those beautiful golds and greens that are in there. It just really makes the image stand out. So very well done image. Again, minor in scope, and realizing it may not be an option with the PSA rules, but the one bird, there's a little white dot there, and there's also one in the reflection down below. Again, simple thing to make a correction, and but again, may not be applicable. Recognizing what may or may not be the PSA rules, but really a lovely image. I enjoy this.
Beeline, Mia Kern.
So this one, and again, the notes that I have on this were prior to, understanding the criteria to a certain extent with this. When I'm looking at the image, I'm challenged a little bit as to where my eye wants to land because the overall image has, light that is really kind of throughout both the flora plant, the plant itself, the leaves, and even the background, and of course the bee that's coming into it, all very similar in that regard. So that's part of my challenge is trying to figure out what is the primary subject, where does my eye want to land, and again, that's it's hard to capture that with the exact right light meter. It can be done. Maybe spot metering it in the future would have been a help. That it would have been a little bit more of a focus on that, not focus, but exposure setting on that. And again, that's a little bit of the challenge. Is photography is for most of us. We want to land in a particular area, stay there, and then allow our eyes to leave the core element and then explore from there. But here I'm a little challenged to get right to the area where my eye wants to land. But I mean, a lovely image, a lovely catch, clearly depicting motion in the image, but just a little bit challenged with respect to where I want to land on this.
Into the Wind, Bob Gross.
So this is a great representation of motion, and again, it looks like the duck's coming in for a landing. But again, as I pixel peeped at this thing here, I did look at it very closely. The image is really soft throughout, and that could be the function of many things. It could be the shutter speed wasn't fast enough, and I know there's a lot of compromise sometimes we have to do then with our ISO. It could be that the focus point didn't hit it just right. And again, in an image like this, the first thing I study and look at is the eye of the fauna anytime I'm looking at any type of image with that. And again, from the bit of pixel peeping I was doing on this thing here, it looks like it's just a tad soft. And again, it could be shutter speed, it could be focus point, could be a whole host of things, but it's just a little off. And the fact that I don't have a lot of detail in the background in this particular image actually works to the photographer's benefit because it makes the subject stand out just ever so nicely. Really nice image.
Robin, Deborah Lewinson.
So this is one where it's a perfect catch depicting motion. And again, a little bit of competition from some other parts of the image, and in particular, the greenery in the lower right-hand corner. So again, recognizing that it's a bit of a challenge trying to get that exposure right for the right part of the subject. But when I look at this, my eye keeps going down to the green area of the image, and then secondarily to the robin. And I would suspect that the photographer would prefer for the audience to look at it opposite of that. And a consideration that I might employ with this image is potentially cropping it from the bottom up. It looks like it might be 4/3 ratio, make it a 2/3 ratio or something like that. And then that way we mitigate some of the competing other segments of this, i.e. the green area and even that stump to some extent. But what a great catch, depicting motion and catching the image just as the bird is getting ready to take flight. So well done in that regard.
Singing prairie warbler, Jenny Lodge.
So beautiful image. I mean, this is one that is composed well, and it is also just lovely the way the warblers perched on that branch, looking up into the sky or up above. But again, trying to be sensitive to the criteria here that it's supposed to depict motion. I'm not getting that from this image. If anything, to me, it looks like a very calm, still image with it. So if we were judging this on a criteria basis where motion was not the category, this would have placed, I think, in a much better position. But again, recognizing and trying to be sensitive to the criteria that you guys established for this, that's where it pulled it out of that running, if you will. And again, another suggestion might be is if we had just a little more breathing room, potentially to the right. And I like square crops, but I don't necessarily like it when the main subject is dead center in that crop. But it clearly, gets me into the very center. So as I said, early on, it's just a lovely image, just not getting the criteria part of this with respect to the task at hand, which is motion.
Raw Power, Vince Pellegrini. This got honorable mention.
Again, really well done. I think the fact that it's monochromatic was a really good choice by the photographer. I really enjoy how the water is illuminated in certain aspects where presumably the sun is painting this waterfall here. I think the crop looks really well done, and as I said, I think the monochromatic aspect of this is a real plus here because it's not competing with whatever other colors might be surrounded by this. But nicely done image. I'd be hard pressed to suggest a whole lot of change to it. The shutter speed looks to be one in which it works very well here, and again, always recognizing that light is going to be where it's going to take my eye, and it gets me into the center. And then as I'm looking to the peripheral, it starts to take me outside that that area. So nice image and well done.
Okay, that was our Class A nature category. Now we're going to, all right, if I can, how do I? Yeah, I thought hitting tab would do it, but it did not do it. Where's that arrow right there? Okay, we have, this is Class A pictorial. This is Cascade by Bob Gross.
Nice image, and I think the lighting on this works well. I like how my eye is going into some of the rocks that are at the base of this waterfall that's here. Again, lighting is such an important part of it. The fact that the photographer selected a slower shutter speed to capture this image worked really well to that person's benefit. And if there were some things that I would potentially want to try to tweak, and I think in this category, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, you had a little more leeway with respect to post-processing opportunities. I'd be tempted in the perspective, if I was using Lightroom, to bring the horizontal slider a little over to bring the right-hand side of the image towards me ever so slightly. The other thing is my eye wants to know what's on the right-hand side, similar to what we see on the left-hand side, because we see those beautiful walls that appear to be there with the light that's on it. And as such, my brain wants to know what's going on off to the right-hand side, and I'd like to see just a little more information. I shouldn't say information, but I'd like to see a little more of the image itself on the right-hand side. And again, if permissible, I would want to just ever so slightly burn the very top of the image down a little bit so that, again, my eye stays in that resting point towards the center, which right now, as it stands, it goes to that rock and then starts to flow into the waterfalls from there.
Pollinators, Deborah Lewinson, this one first place.
What a great catch. What a great opportunity that existed here. The fact that we have 3 bees in this image. And again, you guys heard me speak earlier to separation, and this really nails it. The what I'm going to call the secondary subjects, which are the bees, or maybe even the tertiary subjects, are not overlapping with the flower, with the grass, reeds, or whatever that is that's sticking through there. And the fact that we have what I'm going to consider and assume the primary subject is the main bee, and the front of the flower is just a brilliant catch. And, again, as I look at this, the secondary subject to me might be, the flower itself. And I looked at the exposure, I looked at the composition, and the fact that the photographer elected to make this monochromatic, I think was a brilliant choice. And for me, just a really absolutely lovely image.
At the carnival.
And I think you did mention that was first place. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yes, I did. Yep, I did.
Okay.
Yep. This is At the Carnival by Ginny Lodge.
So carnivals are always great fun. And of course, it also easily fits the subject category of motion. And it's a great catch that the photographer received here, a slower shutter speed, and yet we don't still have a lot of blur of the person that's in the foreground. However, I would like to see a little more detail. There's 2 things I would suggest, to the photographer for this, is that one is that maybe bring the perspective up a little bit, the vertical slider. If we're using Lightroom, just bring that up a little bit more. And as you do that, I think you'll find that you just ever so slightly a slight crop. But when doing images at fairs and carnivals, it's okay to get a little flamboyant with your vibrance or saturation, and it can really help to make it pop. But being sensitive to the beautiful sky that's in the background, I see detail in the sky, and again, I think it was a really good catch that the photographer picked an exposure that really gave it a very well balance. But with the exception of those couple other tweaks there, I think it's a really good image.
A Foggy Night in the Park, Vince Pellegrini.
I love the just the mood of this, and it's really, for me, just quite nice. The fact that we have 2 cars coming into the image, one leaving it. What a great opportunity and a great catch. If there was anything that I might try to do a little differently, is I'd like to see a little bit more on the right, particularly since this is the motion where the primary cars are going, just to give our eye a little bit of breathing room over there. But notwithstanding on that aspect, I do think it's well done. It almost comes off as monochromatic, but it looks like we've got some beautiful mist or fog in the image. Add to it the car headlights and the car taillights in this. It's just a really nice, comfortable image. And again, I don't know if the photographer jumped out of the car and pulled over to catch this scene, but it was obviously well timed and very appropriate. So nice image.
Through the Blossoms into Spring, Jackie Burke, this got honorable mention.
Okay, and this is one that I understand potentially was in the nature category, but because of the, the PSA requirements that we talked about early on, it was moved here, but I just think it is so lovely. And what a great catch. The position of the bird in the kind of lower third here, the fact that it's blue and complements so well with the pinks and reds and the the greens and the yellows. It really is a nice capture, and I think it's done very well. I'd be tempted just to maybe have a little bit tighter crop, not much, and maybe potentially even just try it with a little bit of a vignette around the perimeter, and have the bird itself stand out just a little bit more. But great catch, good image. I really do enjoy this.
Lagos Morning, Rebecca Carpenter just got second place.
So again, we can't plan for this, but we can prepare for opportunities like this. And the fact that we have that one dove right at the chest level of the young lady who, is dancing or jumping or whatever the case may be, it is a really well-timed image. I love the fact that we, have the pigeons or whatever they are, just positioned so well in the image, and that it really comes off just so well in that regard. What could we potentially do differently? One of the things I might suggest is a little bit of perspective correction on it. That might have pushed it up a little bit more in the judging, but away from that, it's a catch that I just think was obviously well timed, and it's just a fun image in that regard.
Impending storm, Mia Curran.
So here's one of those again. Just a little question on the subject of being motion. I mean, I suspect the clouds are moving, and I suspect that's rain we see in the background there. I could be wrong about that, but it's not quite giving me the sense when I look at it that, wow, look at all the motion in that picture. Even though I know that those clouds are probably moving and that rain's coming down, but it just, I think a little stronger subject in that regard might have been helpful. The fact that we have that beautiful detail, however, in the sky is just lovely. But I'm not sure what the primary subject is. Is it the cloud? Is it the rain? Is it the trees? Is it the field in the foreground? And maybe to help that a little bit, if it was, for example, the clouds and the rain there, I might be tempted to take a slight gradual burn to the front of the image to just darken that competing field a little bit, because again, our eye is going to go to the brightest part and the sharpest part. So I would want to try to get a linear gradient in there and maybe just tone that down just a little bit so I can end up landing in the center. And again, you'll hear me say this in a couple of cases, is maybe a slight vignette would be a real plus to help the image really stand out and pop up. So anyway, beautiful image.
Height, Tom Story.
So this is one where it's a great image, really, fun image. And, you almost have to study it for a minute or two to, look at, is our eye playing a trick on us? Are these wings all tied together? Of course, that's not the case. It was a really good capture by the photographer. One thing, though, that I did say, again, similar to one of the other comments, is I looked closely at this and, I'm struggling with a focus point. It looks a little soft, and there might be one or two places towards the tail of the one plane where it's a little sharper. But again, I struggled to really find that a little bit. So, that's one of the things, and this is so tough when we're photographing particular, aerial shows like this, is, where do you put that? And I think it's the right place. And, maybe it needed, a slightly narrowed down aperture to give us a little bit more depth of field. Or again, it could have been a shutter speed. I don't know that. But the other thing I might consider is at the bottom of the image, that part of the image below the planes is not helping the image. And I think with a a crop where that from the bottom up, just pulling that in a little bit more could have been a real help to the image. But again, well timed, well captured, and clearly fitting the category of motion.
Engineered to Soar, Jackie Burke.
So I really like the detail on this. Again, pixel peeping, I looked at it closely and it seems to be sharp at all the right places. You know, I can see detail in the face. I can see details in the feathers. But there's one thing that, you know, is catching me a little bit is the perspective. And I did, you know, attempt this in Lightroom myself. I wanted to see if I use the perspective correction, if it still would look appropriate. And the even using the auto button in Lightroom, it pulled the upper right-hand corner up, and it does look a much more balanced. And I would suggest to the photographer to potentially try that and look at it from that vantage point, and you might be a little happier, you know, with the result of it. And again, based on what I saw, I thought it worked pretty well with a little minor correction. But again, great catch.
Still Flying, Mia Kern.
So this is a beautiful image. It's well composed. Again, I think I mentioned that I do a fair amount of architectural photography, so I'm always looking at horizontal lines and things like that. And the photographer did a really good job on it. The fact that we see the flag with some movement clearly fits into the category of what's at hand. But I do think that the focus point was missed a little bit. And I think for me, the main focus point should have been the American flag. And I can't tell if it's the clouds or the building, but I really, you know, would like to see that flag a little more sharp. I don't care if the wind is moving it and the you know, the tail end of it's not sharp, but you know, when it gets close to the flagpole, that's where I would like to see it as sharp as possible.
Going to the feeder, Deborah Lewinson.
This is a beautiful image, and the one thing in studying the image is, first of all, the separation. You guys heard me talk about that. A successful image is where you can have that and still have whatever supporting elements in place without losing that. And I think in this case, knowing it was going to the feeder was a very good choice of the photographer to make sure that that was included. But where I looked at it with a little bit of difficulty is the bird itself. There were several portions of the bird that were out of focus, and I don't know why. But the most important part, which was the face, the eye, the beak, that appeared to be really pretty sharp. But as I looked at it in some other areas, there was some softness in some of it. And again, it could have been shutter speed. It could have been you know, aperture setting. It could have been a whole host of other things. But away from that, love the background, love how this stands out from it. I would just say that that's, you know, this is a really good image, and you know, maybe with a couple little other minor tweaks, maybe it could have looked a little differently in that regard, but not significantly. Good job here.
Lagos Morning Leap, Rebecca Carpenter.
So one of the things that I really enjoy about this is the backlighting. I mean, it just takes my eye right to the dancer or, you know, the model, whatever the case may be. And it's obviously environmental, an environmental portrait of some sort. But where I would have a little bit of challenge on this is the perspective ever so slightly could be modified. But the big thing for me is I either want to see less of the bottom or more where I can see her shadow. And, you know, again, if that's the max that it was shot at, you know, there's not a whole lot you can do to obviously recover, you know, the shadow part of it. But what you could do is bring the crop up to maybe about where that brick is on the lower right-hand side. And that is going to force our eye to get even in more so closer to the model, and we're not competing with the brightness of the bottom of the image as it stands right now, But again, don't misunderstand me that if the opportunity was there to capture all of her shadow, that could have made this very compelling, and then maybe I might bring the crop a little bit further down from the top. So, a couple things here that are challenging, and the fact that, the photographer caught this person mid, air is obviously very well done. And I love her pose on this thing here. Just a couple little minor suggestions in that regard. But the bottom of that is really where I think you could do a little bit of work on that, both in the field and in post-processing.
Drop, Bob Gross.
Okay, so this one I looked at again real close. I did pixel peep on this, and I did find what appeared to be a fair amount of noise in the image itself. But on even further investigation, there appeared to be a fair amount of chromatic aberration on this thing here in the color segment here, and again, you could potentially use some noise reduction to help with that. The other thing is I might want to tone, and which is maybe a little counterintuitive because we do like brightness and colors, but it doesn't look as natural to me as I might think it would be, and I'd be tempted to take those yellowish orange colors and potentially desaturate that part of it. And I think if you look at the result of what that could do, it actually is quite interesting, because I did do a quick look at that to see what would happen if I did that. And so anyway, I would throw that out as a suggestion going forward.
Joy of Summer, Ginny Lodge.
So, what a cute, fun picture. And it's one of those where I don't know if it was spontaneous and the photographer had to react quickly or not, but I love the fact that the young lady, where she is positioned with respect to the wave in the background. And it's that one area where the wave is crashing is where the young lady is positioned. And that, to me, was a brilliant catch that the photographer was able to capture. If I had my cake and eat it too, though, I'd be tempted to maybe want to stand a little taller so that the horizon line is not going through her head in the background. And again, that might sound nitpicky, but again, you would be amazed at how different that would make the image look. The other thing too is that, another option, if the young lady was cooperative and you were able to get her to do it again, is by standing up a little higher and maybe a little further back. I'd love to see more of the reflection in the wet sand that's in the foreground. And again, what I'm asking for are things that may or may not be possible because it might have been very spontaneous and there was a split second to make the decision. And in that case, the photographer did a very good job of catching it. And I think at that critical moment where she's right in between the waves before they're crashing, I just think was a brilliant opportunity.
On and Over Deception Pass, Vince Pellegrini. This got third place.
Really nice image. Fitting the requirement of motion, that it was done very well. You could have shot this with a shorter or excuse me, a longer shutter speed or a shorter shutter speed, and it would have had some influence. But if this shutter speed would have been much quicker, you would not sense any emotion. And the challenge in that case, it could almost look like the cars are standing still. The photographer did a good choice, a great choice here, whatever shutter speed they selected here. And I also like that if you'll notice, the cars don't overlap with the top of the mountain in the background. It falls just within that, which again, I think is really helpful. I also really enjoy the fact that there is beautiful detail in the sky, because I know that we're always challenged with the bright highlights when we have skies in it. And the photographer did a really good job of capturing the detail in that sky in tandem with the cars. And the position that the photographer selected in this case, I think, was brilliant, because you have that nice opening here, and it gives me an opportunity to see, I think, a majority of the bridge that's there. So well done, well compositioned, and very nice image.
Teamwork, Tom Story.
So this is one where I really like the geometry of this, if you will. I like the fact that we have, again, you've heard me say this, separation. We have beautiful separation between all the planes that are coming through. One of the things I'd be tempted to try on this would be, again, if you're using Lightroom, and I refer to that because that's kind of my tool of choice and I'm most familiar with it, is you could select the background or just select the sky and maybe bring the highlights down uh, just a little bit. But what I'd like to do is suggest maybe even a little bit more contrast in that. So I think that would be, worth a try. And it might, I think it would make the primary subjects become that much more obvious and stand out a little bit more. But good catch, good composition. I really enjoyed that image.
And that was it for Class A pictorial.
Okay.
This is Green Heron Flying, Alan Chilius.
Well, again, great catch, knowing that the task at hand is capturing movement, and really good job in that realm. One of the things that I think hurts the image a little bit is that it appears to be a little soft. I really looked closely at the head, the wings, the feathering, and again, from what I saw, is it just appeared to be a little bit soft, and there was also some noise in the image. And again, we know it's a factor of how we have our settings and so forth, and so it's competing a little bit with the background. But again, if there was an opportunity to try this again, I'd be tempted to suggest maybe a little bit faster shutter speed or being very careful with the focus point. But obviously a good job in catching the task at hand, which is movement.
Nesting is hard work, Amy Langman.
So again, as similar to what I've said in some of the other comments, I'm not getting a strong sense of motion in the image. I think it's a really good composition. I think the photographer deserves a lot of credit for being very careful not to cut the end of the stick off in which the bird is on. To me, that's a real important part of it. And had the bottom, obviously that's going to extend to the base. So I think the photographer did a great job of capturing it in that realm. And again, recognizing what was said regarding the PSA requirements, I did think that potentially a little bit of dodging and burning here could have gone a long way to help the image. But again, I'm not letting me influence it as it relates to what the rules are in place right now.
Smooth Tides, Angel Rivera.
Nice image. Again, recognizing motion. This is one way to capture motion, and we have that beautiful water movement with a slower shutter speed. But away from that, I am challenged a little bit on deciphering what is the primary subject. And again, knowing what we discussed in some of the other images, is our eyes going to go to the brightest part? So the first thing when I look at an image like this, the first thing my eye goes to is the lower right-hand corner. And I'm guessing the photographer did not want that to be necessarily the first place where my eye is going to land or the audience's eye is going to land. But yet, because of it being what it is, it's a challenge. Now, how do you circumvent that in the field? My temptation would have been to move slightly to the right and maybe lift the camera a little bit more so it's cutting out some of that really bright portion of the beach that's there. And that would have been an opportunity. And again, if we weren't under PSA rules, I'd be tempted to suggest just burning that too. But anyway, good depiction of motion and a good composition too.
Like, we are allowed to dodge and burn in nature. It's just the vignetting and then removing stuff are the main things.
Okay, all right, well, then clearly the answer for me here would have been to dodge, if we're staying with this, excuse me, not dodge, but burn the right-hand corner of this, and when I say burn, I'm referring to darkening that down. And, there's multiple ways to do that, to accomplish that, to get our eye into the center. And thanks for that clarification.
Frozen Wave, Mike Rumler, this got first place.
Great catch. And what's fun about this to me is I don't have to guess what I'm looking at. And it's water movement. It's a segment of a wave. And yet there's nothing around the image that competes. There's not an island. There's not a palm tree. And in some cases, it's nice to have a sense of place. But in this particular case, it's almost more of a, like a graphic element or an abstract element that was captured so well. And opposite of what we saw with some of the other images, the shutter speed here was a fast shutter speed and not a slow shutter speed. And I think it just really caught the wave just so well. And the fact that, we have complementing colors. We got the yellowish gold with the blue in the upper part of the horizon. And the horizon is in the center, but in this particular case, I don't have an issue with that. So kudos to the photographer on this one, and that's the reason why I gave it first place.
I have a question. Amy Langman.
At first, I thought you said you had a question, so so I could see why the photographer tagged it like that. It's really, a good name. And just as a sidebar, I have the opportunity to judge a lot of photography contests, and sometimes some of the clubs and so forth ask, is there anything that we could do better? And in cases where they don't give a name to an image, that makes it a little more challenging. And as a judge, and I've done this with other judges too, it helps. And we've changed our mind on, in some cases, that because of the name, it actually has helped us in awarding a certain category. So anyway, I'm glad that you folks do that. I think that's a real plus. So on this one, I'd like to see maybe a little bit more contrast on this. I just want to see that just pumped up a little bit. It looks a little dark, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I think in that respect, that would be something that I would challenge the photographer to think about. But the fact that we have these two birds positioned really closely together, very nice composition and well guarded, well done in that regard.
Free Swallow Flight, Alan Chiles.
So this is a really great shot. And one of the things, with nature is that what's very, very important is the eye of, whatever the subject is, if it's in the fauna category. And I cannot see the eye in this image. Now, whether or not that could be accomplished with some dodging, that might go a long way to helping it. And again, for the photographer's benefit, whoever took this, what a lovely catch. You had a really nice shutter speed. You had a beautiful background. So the two things that, I would encourage the photographer to think about going forward is, again, getting a little more light in the bird. And if you're in the field, of course, is positioning yourself in a way in which it's flying towards the light so it can help you. And absent that, potentially dodging the eye a little bit. And then the other thing is we've got a lot of space at the bottom right and the bottom itself. I'd be tempted to take a crop from the bottom right, pull that up a little bit, and get me quicker into the main subject. But a really lovely catch. And of course, depicting motion is very much accomplished with this.
Budding, Angel Rivera, this got honorable mention.
So great image. The fact that we have these two and they look like wasps together, and they are moving, and particularly the one on the left, I see the wings just really buzzing away. So clearly depicts the the motion aspect of it. Is there anything that, you know, could be done a little differently? And again, I would encourage the photographer to think about the crop itself. Not, you know, as you're photographing it, you might be catching it where it is dead center, and you know, maybe there's an opportunity to move your focus point to the left and then move your camera to the right, just so it's in that, you know, we have the rule of thirds and some of those other things. But if it can't be accomplished like that in the field, I'd be tempted to maybe bring the lower left-hand corner in a crop position up, and I potentially want to burn some of those highlights in the background down just a little bit. But again, clearly fitting the bill of the task at hand with motion. Photographer did a good job here.
Dragonfly Courtship, Trisha Falco just got third place.
So, and again, this may or may not be applicable back to that the PSA requirement, but the one thing for me is I see those two yellow pieces on the left side, and you know, that to me is distracting ever so slightly from the main subject. The other thing that is a little distracting for me is that black kind of rectangle in the lower left-hand corner. So how do we get around that? And my temptation would be is to take the crop and pull from the left and just mitigate that to a certain extent, so there's no question as far as where my eye wants to go. That'll accomplish several things. One, it'll get me to the main subject. Two, it'll take me off the primary subject being dead center. And the real positives on this is the lovely colors of the flora in the picture. We have the dragonflies, which I'm assuming dragonflies, depicting the motion, which is the requirement at hand. And I love how the one dragonfly is dead centered in the beautiful gold background that's there. And anyway, just for me, I think a really lovely image. And, you know, with the couple of the other suggestions as far as what could be done to enhance it some more, just throw that out there. But I really do enjoy this.
Scores well, Mike Rumler has got second place.
So, I mean, if there's an image that's going to depict motion, this is it. I mean, it's you know, the decisive moment when the wave crashed on something. I like the fact that we've got foreground elements, so I can get a real sense of place, contrary to one of the other images that I mentioned earlier. I really do like the positioning. I like the composition. I like the lighting on this. It's just, I think, extremely well done. And again, maybe a little suggestion might be to, you know, burn a little bit of the foreground down there, or add some contrast to that, just so we don't lose sight of what the primary subject is. But for me, I just really enjoyed this image a lot.
And that's it for Class B nature. Moving on to Class B pictorial. This is Splash by Jody Kleinschmidt.
So really nice image. The framing on it is just done so well. We have again, I don't know the rules of you know, anything with regard to horseback riding, but there's a red flag on the left, a white flag on the front, and catching the person on the horse, you know, right dead center in that is really, really good. Let me just look at my notes, because there was something on this. I remember what it was. There was a fair amount of noise in this when I looked at the image close up. And this is an image where I'd be tempted to, if you had an opportunity to redo this, you're clearly not going to redo it with this one, but maybe shoot with a very wide aperture, so that I'm not as curious about the background, because, you know, my eye is still landing on the horse and the jockey being the primary subject, and I don't need detail in the background subsequent to that, because that's all either secondary or tertiary. And so I potentially want to see a little bit more of a blur in the background. And again, that could be accomplished with a wider aperture and a another option. You could endeavor and attempt to do some of that in post. But anyway, well shot and great catch.
Rainy Crossing, Mike Rumler, this got honorable mention.
So one of the reasons I really enjoyed this is it's creative. It is, and you may recall from when I had the opportunity to do the presentation for you folks, is look at something like what a child would look at, and and it gives us that beautiful creative opportunity when we can see and discover something in that regard. And I so enjoy the colors. It's clearly depicting motion with the gates moving up and down at the train crossing with the lights blinking. We've got a wet surface. I'm assuming it's raining, and we even have what appears to be like the foreground of the hood. So again, I just thought from a creative standpoint, this was just a very fun image.
3 is a crowd, Patricia Falco.
So this is another really good catch. The photographer did an excellent job. That we have what I'm considering the primary subject, the 2 dancers in the front, as the main subject, kind of captured in that frame that's behind it, and in all cases, with respect to the attire, the 2 women with the dresses, nothing's cut off in the frame. Just a really good catch in that regard. Is there anything that could be done a little differently? And again, it's similar to what I had mentioned in the other image, is try shooting this, with a wide open aperture, so that the person in the background becomes very apparent that that's a secondary element and not the primary element. Now, I don't have the benefit of knowing what the photographer's intentions were, and it could be that, both elements were very important as such. Then the photographer did a good job of capturing, that, but I don't have the benefit of knowing that. But I think, the way I look at it, that the couple dancing in the foreground, I'd want to see that would, if my guess is that that's the primary, and as such, I want to have a little bit of time studying that, and then allow my eye to go to the secondary element. But because they're both in focus, it's a little bit challenging in that regard. But what a wonderful catch with this.
Smoky Arizona Skies, Amy Langman.
So on this one here, again, too, with due respect, it's a really good catch, but I'm not getting the sense of motion. That might be a volcano in the background. It might be a tornado brewing where there is some motion with it, but I didn't feel it quite hit the category of motion, with the criteria that you guys have set up. And so that would be the main thing that I would say here. But from a compositional standpoint, I think it's composed well. You have the bass, in the lower third. It's not like, midpoint or anything like that. And the fact that the photographer shooting directly into the sun, that was a very creative, and also in some respects a bold step sometimes, but it looks like they were able to pull it off. But I'm just not getting that feeling of motion with respect to this.
Back to first, Mary Beth Myford.
What a great catch here. The fella sliding into the plate with the ball, directly above him. And you've got some of the team behind him looking on. But the one thing that is not helping the image, unless there's a reason for wanting it to have a sense of place, is I would have taken the upper left-hand corner and cropped it just a little bit further so that I don't see the car headlights and the wheels and so forth. It would have made such a big difference. And again, I would just challenge the photographer to maybe thinking about that both in the field and or with respect to post cropping. But what a great catch, and clearly fitting the criteria for the motion here.
Reading Glow, Angel Rivera, this got third place.
Yeah, I just really enjoy the composition here, and again, a little bit I know of your neck of the woods. I think that's the pagoda up in the upper midpoint of the image, and the cityscape is just really nice, and the fact that it's a long exposure. I see the motion of vehicles in the foreground there. Really did a good job of capturing it. The perspective is just a little off on it, and again, if the photographer took this back in the Lightroom and just even used Mr. Auto on that, I think it would make just a quick, simple correction on it where that would be caught. But I would like to see a little more contrast in the image, particularly in the area, where the traffic is, and it would probably make that more of a better landing point for our eye and brain to come to, and then we could start to explore around the image from there. But good catch, good position, overall, just really a nice image.
Blowing in the Wind, Mike Rumler.
So again, with due respect, I don't sense the motion here, and even though the image might have been taken on a very, very windy day, it doesn't emulate motion at all to me, and as such, I was a little challenged with that part of it. And in a situation like this, where the task is to emulate motion, I'd be tempted to suggest to the photographer that try it with a slower shutter speed, and it might create a little bit of an abstract look that could give you that sense of motion. But otherwise, without me seeing the motion, that was one of the challenges that I had with this. But I mean, it's a good catch. But again, try to be a little creative with it, and give a little bit of extra time with the shutter speed.
Sending Rails, Jody Kleinschmidt.
Again, another great shot here. It's the perspective is, just really, really nice. You are competing a little bit with the background, and again, I realize you can't always have your cake and eat it too. Is there a way that you could accomplish some of that, maybe in the field a little differently? And depending upon your camera system is, if you could get that camera almost right down to the ground, face it up. If you pull the screen up where it's kind of facing more up there, you could potentially cut out a lot of the people that are at the base of this. And so then it's very apparent then that the primary subject, what it is. The other thing that you could consider is, with a little perspective correction included, is to crop the base of the image out. And you might find that becomes a little more compelling, and then it's a little more obvious to, what the viewers are going to be, their primary focus would be. And so again, just a couple suggestions, but great moment, great catch. Just a couple other suggestions on maybe how to take it a little bit further with another step or two.
Sending a Helping Branch, Amy Langman.
So this is one where the photographer did a really good job of not cutting off the branches. So congratulations in that regard. The background is competing a little bit here because it's the brighter part. So as a suggestion, dodging the birds a little bit more, or maybe even increasing the exposure overall, either in the field or in post, and then trying then to darken down the background a little bit, burning that, or again, if appropriate, you could take it in the Lightroom and just select the green color and make that a bit darker so that the primary subjects stand out. The fact that the photographer is able to capture the bird looks like ready to take off. The motion is clearly there and fits the criteria for that. But again, I want to land on the birds themselves, and so as a suggestion to the photographer, try to make that stand out as much as possible. And a way to potentially accomplish that would be to darken down the background a little bit.
Throw to first. Mary Beth Myford.
So on this one, uh, great catch again. I mean, it almost looks like the fellow's dancing there in the air. Um, and one of the things that I'd, maybe throw out there as a suggestion on how you could make this even a little more compelling is, again, the primary subject, the ball player that's right in the forefront there, is maybe, brighten him up a little bit. You've got the ball positioned so well, so strategically. And again, similar to what I mentioned the last one, if there was an opportunity to just darken that base foreground and the background a little bit, maybe even add a little bit of contrast to it. And the other temptation might be is the little bit of sky that you see in the very top, to potentially pull that crop down just a little bit. So again, I could focus on the ball player himself. And my eye does wander around the image a little bit on this one. And again, that would be a way to help mitigate that to a certain extent.
Time and motion, Angel Rivera. This one, first place.
What a great catch. And this is a beautiful job of panning the subject. It's again, knowing, what your criteria was for this competition, clearly fit the bill well for that. Is there anything I would do a little differently? I'd be tempted again to take that crop from the bottom up towards the yellow line and either eliminate it or cut it right around that point. The piece below the yellow line doesn't do anything to help the image in that regard. And again, if you saw the opportunity ahead of time, maybe you could even catch it so the bike rider was between those two blue whatever they are in the background that I don't know. Again, I'm getting nitpicky on it, but again, if there was the opportunity to get that ideal shot, that would be a scenario. But this, to me, clearly fits the category and the criteria that was set out by you guys, and it's well done. And the subject itself, I should point out, is tack sharp, even though they appear to be panning with this, and it's done very well.
Wild Leap of Faith, Trisha Falco. This got second place.
Great shot again on this. I really, I don't know where this was taken and how it was taken, but wow, what a neat opportunity to see this. Looks like it's, could be at Assateague or Chincoteague or, maybe down in the Carolinas. But the one thing I'd point out here is that if you could add a little bit of contrast here, I think that would go a long way to helping it, and maybe dodging the horse itself, and at the same time, even pull out some of the texture in the horse. And I did take a quick stab at that to see if that was possible, and I found I had pretty good success with it. And the only other suggestion I might throw out there is the bottom of the image. I might want to bring that crop up a little bit. The little bit of that's at the base there doesn't do anything to help me. And absent that, at a minimum, maybe try to burn it a little bit. But beautiful image. I love the sky in the background and how the horse is positioned just below the cloud lines there, and just a really lovely image. So well done.
And that wraps up our competition for June.
Excellent.
And with that, I don't know if we want to put it over to the screen with everybody else. Does anybody have any questions for Frank? No? Are there anything in the online chat?
Wow, did I nail it that good that there's no questions? Or did I get somebody upset that I just didn't like or liked or whatever?
Yep, they're going to the, I don't know if there's anything in the chat. Oh, click, there's one thing in there. just to thank you for your time and your critique. And I would echo that. Frank, thank you very much. Great insight to all the images. I think everybody really appreciates the feedback for sure.
Well, Mike, if you want, I did take the liberty to edit a couple of these, and if you want, I can show those to you quick. But again, if time's not appropriate, I'm glad to not
I'm for that.
take
Love
the
that.
extra time. That's your call.
Yeah. Can you share your screen?
I sure can. And you want me to go ahead? And I'll just point out a couple things, where I said on a few of these that there might be an opportunity to just do a couple tweaks, and I can share um, just a few of those, and I have those up here. And if you want, I can just do. I didn't take the time to do this in all of them, but I can share a couple things with you. And I'll use this as an example. In this particular one, let me give you full screen here first. I think I can do that. It may not let me do that. Try the tab. Yeah, it's not let me do that. All right. Hopefully you can see that. It's always a challenge when I'm doing Lightroom over this. But in any event, this image here, and when I made some of my comments, you can see what I did between the two. Here's the picture of the image as taken, and I mentioned about the green being a competing element to the primary subject. And so what I did is I just darkened that down and added some contrast um, to that part of the image. Here's another one where, again, this may or may not be applicable on the removal of aspects, but if you can see my cursor, there's that little white dot there, and there's a couple little white dots here. And I just took that a step further and just eliminated that just to give it a little cleaner look. And I'll just jump to the ones that I took a stab at here. Here's the first place winner. And again, as I say, just a lovely, lovely image. But I thought, what if we take that and give it a square crop? And you can see the difference. It gets my eye right into the primary subject. And again, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but those are just a couple things that jumped out at me. Let's see here. This is the image where I had mentioned about changing the perspective. And as you can see, again, beautiful image. But when I change the perspective, which is this next one, that's what it looks like now. And so my eye is not struggling with the fact that we have the verticals in the background that don't seem to match how our eye would normally see it. And I'll go back one more time. You can see before and after. Again, just a simple perspective correction there, and throw that out to you for whatever that's worth. This is the other image where we had the image at the fair, and I mentioned about maybe modifying the perspective. And in this particular case, I did, and I added some contrast and vibrance. And you decide which one stands out more, which one jumps out more. But this is the before, this is the after. Again, changing the perspective a little bit, adding some contrast and a little bit more of vibrance and a little more of the saturation. Here's another one here that I did. Oh, this is the woman that just lovely, lovely shot of this woman jumping. And since, of course, I don't have the raw image to know if there's more data. So I thought, well, what if I just went and cropped that base out a little bit and changed the perspective ever so slightly to get the buildings so they were accurate. This is the image that I ended up coming back to. So again, this is as, submitted, and with all that extra space down below that I don't have the full shadow. So I pulled it up to just where the brick line is at the bottom, and it gets my eye right into the main part of this thing here. And as you can see, I've changed the perspective a little bit just to capture that aspect of thing. All right, let's jump down here. I did not do anything on here. So here's the one where, we spent a little bit of time in this. I just think this is such a lovely image. And again, the competition of the in my mind, a little bit of the distractions in the lower left side and those yellow things there. I just changed the crop a little bit, eliminated those, and ended up with this. And my eye no longer has a challenge as to where to go, what's the main subject, and I can get focus on the primary subject. So I'll do the as submitted and then as modified. Again, just a couple little things that, might be beneficial to the photographer. And, on this one, just again, what a great shot. And what I did here is I meant, the things I mentioned about a little more detail in the horse itself and potentially changing the crop or adding a linear gradient. This is what my attempt was. And you can see before, after, and look at the detail in the horse, its mane, its skin tone. And I'll go back one more time. You see those two little dots that are right below the left shoulder of the horse. It might be on the horse. I don't know. It might be sand that was kicked up. But again, I found my eye competing with that a little bit. So I just took that out and came up with an image like you see in this particular finished product here. And this is the one where I mentioned what a great catch, I guess literally and figuratively here. But my eye was competing with the vehicles that are in the upper part of it. So just simply changing the crop a little bit. Here it is after, as submitted. Here it is after, and again, you decide which one you like better. Oh, and I do one more thing. See the ball player behind the guy catching the ball? I just decided he was not important in the image, and with due respect to that person, I took him out and I got rid of the cars, and this is the image that I ended up with. Was there anything else here? Yeah, there's one more here. So here's that lovely image of downtown that I really, really enjoyed. I thought this was very, very creative on the photographer's part to catch this, a beautiful evening scene. And this is the as submitted, and here it is with my edit. So did you see the perspective change? Because it's a little bit out of skew on the perspective. Changed it, added some contrast, did a little dodging, did a little burning, and again, before, or as submitted, I should say, and as modified. And so those were a couple of the pieces that I just did a quick check on to see if what I was saying made sense to everybody. And those were some of the results I had. And of course, recognize I'm working with a JPEG and not a raw file too. So with that being said, I will stop sharing. And again, if there's any other questions, please know I am glad to answer. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you folks again.
Well, thanks, Frank. That was great. Comments, I don't know if you can see those or not on your screen. Thanks, great critiques, very nice critique. Brought up fair points while giving lots of compliments. Thanks for great takes. Appreciate your comments on the Robin image. And thanks for all the great info. So yeah, I echo that. I think this has been really helpful, and it's very interesting to see. I noticed a lot of your comments were just about crop and the impact that can make, just cropping things slightly. It's quite a bit of impact. So does anybody else have anything?
What our critiques are about the education.
Yeah.
That's why we encourage people.
Yep.
What was the comment? I couldn't hear it.
All right. Oh, part of the whole thing here is educational for all of us to, kind of learn from this, and really appreciate that. And yeah, well done. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else? I think that's it, Frank.
All right. Well, it was a real pleasure again, and I hope our paths get to cross again. I really enjoyed working with you folks. It's been real nice. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Frank. Yep.
All right. Goodbye now.